Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. Today we continue our video series in Hammock Camping 101 by talking about insulation. Specifically the insulation that goes underneath your hammock that's going to help keep you warm at night when you sleep. Now there are a few options that we're going to talk about in this video, and we're going to go over the pros and cons and see which one works best for you. But first you might be asking, why? Why do I have to worry about insulation underneath me? Can't I just sleep in a sleeping bag and be done with it? Well, for most camping scenarios, no, that's not going to work. And the reason is because when you sleep in your sleeping bag, whether it's on the ground or in a hammock, you are crushing the loft that is underneath you. And that loft is what keeps you warm. It retains your body heat and the heat from the environment, and it is what keeps you warm during the night. So when you're sleeping on your sleeping bag, you're crushing all of that loft, and it loses its ability to keep you warm during the night. So for that point, you need something underneath you, some type of insulation that's not going to get crushed. And there's two primary options that people use when they go hammock camping. One is sleeping pads, and two are underquilts. So in just a minute, we're going to go out and we're going to go hit the trail, and I'm going to demonstrate both, and we're going to talk about the pros and cons for each one. There are two things that I think that you need to consider when picking your type of insulation. The first is temperature rating. So for a sleeping pad, they have things that are called an R rating. And the higher the R rating, the warmer the pad. Because not all pads are created equal. There are some pads that are out there for three seasons. And there are other pads that are out there that are heavily insulated that'll take you down to negative 20-degree weather. So when you're looking for the pad that you want, be mindful of that R rating and how warm that will keep you during the night. Now for underquilts, what you'll look at is they'll give you a temperature rating, but sometimes that temperature rating is at a comfort level or a survival level. So comfort level means if it's a 20-degree bag, it'll mean, well, you'll be comfortable at 20 degrees and you'll sleep warm. A survival rating will mean that you won't die. It'll keep you warm enough if the temperature drops down to 20 degrees without you freezing to death. So I prefer to look for those that have the comfort ratings. If it is a survival rating, then you may want to add some degrees. So instead of a 20-degree, you may want to get a 30-degree bag, or whatever works for you. But you need to look at the temperature rating of your insulation for the types of trips that you're going to go on. The second thing that you want to consider is the length and the width of your insulation. So for sleeping pads, they make wide pads. You'll see here in a minute, I use a Nemo Tensor. It's a 25-inch wide pad, and I love it. It's a bit heavier, but it's insulated, and I love it, but it helps, give me full coverage. It allows me to move around on the pad a little better without falling off. It doesn't taper at my feet. And so those are some things that I consider the type of pad if I use it in my hammock. But they do make smaller pads. I have a Thermarest Neo Air Uberlight, weighs like 8 ounces. It's wonderful, but I believe the width is 21 inches maybe, and it tapers down at my feet, and so it weighs less. It weighs probably almost half a pound to a pound less than my Nemo, but it doesn't provide me as good of coverage. I don't sleep as well with it at night. But those are some things that you need to consider when you're picking out your pad for the type of coverage that you're going to want to have at night. Now for your underquilts, you need to look at the length. So the length of underquilt that I have is a full-size underquilt, which means it covers all the way from the head all the way down to my feet. and everything is completely covered. It is a heavier option, but again, for me, it provides the better sleep. But they also make what they call like 3/4 quilts, shorter quilts. And you may be thinking, well, why would somebody buy a shorter quilt? Well, it is less weight, so it helps compensate for some of that heavier weight. And some people use other methods for keeping their body parts warm. So, for example, if my underquilt starts at my shoulder, well, all I need really is a pillow or some type of you know, either your clothing bag or something that you could put underneath your head that'll provide insulation for your neck and your head. For your legs, or for like from your knees to your feet, I've seen people sleep with their backpacks, and the backpacks give them a little support underneath their legs while they're sleeping, and it also provides them warmth as well. And I've seen people wear down little booties or socks on their feet, which gives them insulation on their feet. So there are definitely ways that you can make it work. I would just say be mindful. You know, if you're trying to be weight conscious about your underquilt, just be mindful of how you're going to keep the rest of your body warm that isn't covered by the quilt. So those are two things I think you need to consider when you're looking at your insulation: is the temperature rating as well as the length and the width of the insulation to give you complete coverage during the night. All right, enough talking. Let's go hit the trail, hang a hammock, and I'll walk through my sleeping pad option as well as my underquilt option, and we'll discuss the pros and cons of each and see which one might work best for you. The first type of insulation we're going to look at is the sleeping pad. This is my Nemo Tensor, and this is by far my most comfortable pad. When I do backpack with a tent, this is a sleeping pad that I have. It's not the lightest sleeping pad that I have, but it's definitely the most comfortable. It's insulated, and I've taken it down to probably around freezing, around 32 degrees. But this is a wonderful pad. I love this pad. So we're gonna put this in this hammock and see how it works out. Now that my pad is all blown up, now we're gonna sit on it. This is definitely another con for me. It's trying to situate it just right. You can see like my pad starts popping out. And so I gotta try to make sure it's not falling out of my hammock. So I don't like that. I don't like it already begins to shift around. Again, you can have a lot of weight pads, so that is a pro, is that I've got a pad that weighs about 8-10 ounces, and that will work just fine, especially during the summertime. But it has the same thing where it's kind of hard to get in. Where do you sit in? And then laying on the pad. All right, once you're in your pad, the issue I have now is, you need to angle the pad, right? Because if I'm sleeping straight on like this, I can tell I have a huge gap underneath my legs, and that's no good. So I still need to adjust my pad to the angle. So a lot of it is working it over, and then my pad pops out. And this is a fairly wide pad. I try to keep that in there, but it just keeps popping out. So I'm here, you can see I'm at my corner. I'm at an angle here, and I just have to deal with my pad popping out. And this is a wider pad, so this is a 25-inch wide pad. That's probably why I'm having a little more issues. My other pad is not that wide, but it's also not as comfortable. So that's really the main issue that I have, is trying to just situate the pad at the angle that I want to lay in. And then for me, I don't just sleep always right to left. Sometimes I move left to right. I don't know if other people do that, but I do that. And then my pad You know, now my shoulder's off, my feet are off. I got to readjust my pad, and it's just a pain for me. And then I kind of roll in my, sleep on my side, sometimes on my pad, like this, which I like to do. And I move back and forth. But as you can see, my pad is just sliding all over the place. So you can use a pad for your insulation. You can use a sleeping pad for your under insulation. It'll keep you warm. This has definitely kept me warm in degrees down in the 30s. And I love this pad, I really do. I just don't like it in a hammock. It just doesn't work best for me. And I know they make hammocks that have sleeves, and you can slide the pad in there and that'll help secure it. They also have pads that are built more for to not move in a hammock, and so that still might work for you, especially if you're just trying to get into hammock camping and you already have a sleeping pad. You might want to try it out. It just doesn't work for me. So my preferred method for my under insulation is an underquilt, and that's what I have here. And I have one from Hammock Gear. It's the incubator, goes down to 20 degrees, and I use this for almost all of my backpacking trips. Even if it's a little bit warmer, I found that this works great for me. So this packs down just as light and as small as the sleeping pads, so that's about equivalent. This is just heavier. It's heavier than most sleeping pads. It's probably a little heavier than my Nemo Tensor that we were looking at. But most general pads, especially summer pads, this is going to be significantly heavier, maybe even a pound or so. So that's the kind of con that you have with the Underquilt. The next thing, which I think can be a con, is the setup. It's not necessarily intuitive. So what you do is there's an S-beaner. You hook that towards the end of your continuous loop. Do that on that one end. And then you do that on your other end. I'm going to put my hammock inside the quilt. You say, Joe, that's not too hard. I can do that. That's the easy part. Let me show you the cords on the sides and show you how you need to adjust it so you won't get cold. It's like I showed you, there's an S carabiner that hooks where the gathered end of your continuous loop. There's all these straps that you have to use, and you need to, so you can dial it in. So this one right here, this pulls this right here to pull this in or to make that longer, right? And you have that on both sides. And then you have this strap right here, which helps cinch in and close in any air pockets that may exist. So what happens is you need to kind of figure out, well, do I sleep left to right or right to left? And because what you want is maybe you want your head and you want your feet at this kind of angle. Well, then you would want this tighter on this side. You'd want that looser on that side so that your feet are coming out over here, right? So again, there's some adjusting that you have to do, and you do that on both ends, on both sides of the hammock, and then you do it on both ends of the hammock. And it's not hard, it just takes a little work. It takes a little fine tuning. The issue that I find is that, I do kind of switch from left to right and right to left, and I have to be mindful of how I am hanging my underquilt to keep me warm. So getting into your hammock with an underquilt, I think, is a lot easier. And there's nothing slipping or sliding out. it's just already underneath you. You can see how it begins to wrap around the hammock, which is, it is great. The thing I love about hammock camping, you know, just getting off the ground is wonderful, but being wrapped and down underneath and on top of you, it is an amazing feeling. So now you can see I have the quilt. I've got the quilt. It's wrapped around me. So when I adjust my underquilt just right, then I can move, right? I'm covered by the underquilt. If I'm laying right to left, or for the night, I want to shift over, you know, and now I'm still covered. I'm still covered by my my underquilt. And that, to me, that's the biggest pro. That's the biggest pro for me, is that when I'm sleeping in my hammock at night, I want to move around. I want to have the freedom to roll from side to side. I sleep on my back a lot, but I want to have the freedom to sleep on my sides as well. And I feel like the underquilt gives me that best option for having more room. You know, and as I'm moving around, I'm always protected by the quilt, and it's keeping me warm. So the pros of a sleeping pad are that they can be fairly lightweight, depending on which season you're looking at. And it's fairly easy to set up, you know, in terms of blowing up the pad and putting it in your hammock. You know, those are the pros. The cons are it slips around in the pad, and it doesn't stay in one place very well. And therefore, when you move off that pad, you're going to feel instant cold. And that's, to me, that con outweighs the convenience and the weight of the sleeping pad. So the pros of the underquilt is that it gives you complete warmth, and it wraps your entire body in quilted down and keeps you warm throughout the night and allows you to move around. And it compacts pretty well too. I mean, it compacts pretty well. I mean, it's down, so it packs in my backpack pretty easily. The only issue is the weight. It is, you know, 20 plus ounces, depending on what the rating of your underquilt is for the temperature you're trying to sleep at, and also the all the wires, all the strings that you have to adjust, and they get tangled up, and you got to untangle them and stuff like that. But for me, again, that inconvenience of trying to work and align and get that underquilt just right for me is not enough to dissuade me from using it, because of how comfortable I am. You know, they always say invest in your sleep. Well, the quilt helps me invest in my sleep. I get my best night's sleep, always stay warm head to toe. And so that would be my recommendation, is the underquilt.